At 4:52 a.m., with chicken grease stinging the cuts on my hands, I dialed the sheriff and said the line I'd practiced between orders all night. "Sir, the notice has been served. When my son returns from the club this morning, he won't be returning to my house." By noon, his red sports car was idling uselessly at the curb, and I was on my way to a cardiology appointment I hadn't had time for in 3 years. That's the middle of my story. The beginning is uglier, and the ending is cleaner than any floor I ever mopped at KFC. My name is Mara. I'm 68 years old, and for the last 2 years I've worked the graveyard shift at the only fast food place in our town that keeps its lights on until sunrise. If you've never stood under the buzzing heat lamps at 2:30 a.m., watching steam fog a cracked sneeze guard while half-asleep teenagers order extra biscuits, then you don't know what the night does to your bones. It makes them ring like wet glass. It makes your heartbeat feel like a stubborn machine. I didn't always work nights. When my husband was alive, I painted furniture for a consignment shop and made lemon bars for church fundraisers. After he passed, the house turned into a museum of silence and bills. The mortgage was paid, but property taxes, insurance, utilities, those don't dim themselves out of respect for grief. And I had a son, Leon, 26, with a college fund I'd kept ironclad since he was 5. I scrubbed and clipped coupons and skipped my own dentist appointments, but I never touched the account labeled Leon's education. Not even when the water heater sighed its last breath in January, and I boiled kettles to take a shiver of a bath. Leon was always bright in a way that made teachers lean on their elbows and say, "He's gifted, Mrs. Hale." When he was small, he used to sit at the kitchen table and build castles out of measuring cups. I'd kiss his hair and tell him that being gifted wasn't a gift if you never unwrapped it. He promised me he would. He promised a lot of things. Enter Bryn. Pretty girl. Loud laugh. An entire social map arranged on her phone. They met in a freshman seminar and fell in love with each other's reflection in every window. She liked photos. He liked being in them. A week after their 1-year anniversary, Leon sat me down, reached for my hands, and asked for temporary access to the education account. "We'll pay it back in 6 months, Mom. We found a used convertible that's basically a steal, and if I can drive for rideshare in a nice car, I'll make double on surge nights." He had numbers on a napkin. He had a grin that looked like it used to. He had Bryn behind him, nodding so hard her earrings flashed. I said yes. The first Friday with the convertible, they drove to the city for a DJ set and posted videos of a glowing bottle sparking like a birthday cake. The caption, "Work hard, play harder." By Sunday, the caption had aged like milk. By winter break, the temporary access had become a standing ovation for every bad decision, a weekend in Miami for networking, an apartment with an industrial faucet, another steal of a lease on a second car, so Bryn can get to her internship in style. Then the internships were traded for brand collaborations, which seemed to be code for taking pictures in expensive clothes that still had tags. When tuition came due, there wasn't enough left in the account to cover even a semester at the state college. "We're taking a gap year," Leon said, which morphed, without a seam, into 2. Meanwhile, the electric company doesn't clap for your children's boldness. I took the night shift at KFC because a friend from church said the manager liked dependable. I was that. Even when my hands swelled and the tendons in my wrists felt like wires strung too tight. Even when the fryer popped and kissed my forearm with oil. Even when the headset crushed my hair and the register's screen froze right when a bus pulled up and 30 faces stared in through the glass like winter birds. You learn things working nights. You learn the shape of people's hunger. The drunk, the desperate, the shift nurse with eyes so tired they were beyond blinking. The kids who looked like my boy if you held them far away and squinted. You learn to make a sandwich with one hand while tucking a loose cough under your elbow with the other. You learn the back door always sticks at 3 a.m., like the building is holding its breath. My doctor said my blood pressure was uncooperative. He used to be kind about it. Then, 6 months into the job, he pressed his lips together and said, "You're not a refrigerator, Mara. You can't keep running in a hot kitchen all night and then pretend the door closes on all that heat during the day." I promised to rest. I meant it. But there were the cars, the parties, the networking, the subscriptions, the constant, "Mom, you're the best," which is a very pretty bow on a very heavy box. At first, Leon and Bryn came home only to shower, change, and raid the pantry. Then they turned the living room into their landing strip. Shoes like traffic cones. A ring light camped in the corner. If I fussed, Bryn laughed and called me old school. If I asked for rent, they promised next month. If I said the word budget, Leon's smile got tired. The night before everything changed, I took the trash out behind the restaurant. The alley smelled like fryer oil and rain. A delivery truck rattled by. My heart beat wrong. Not faster. Just wrong. Like an orchestra where all the instruments were almost in tune. I braced my palm against the cool brick and breathed. The manager, a nervous man whose kindness came out sideways, asked if I needed to sit. No, I said. Just give me something to do. He handed me a mop. When I got home at dawn, Bryn's car was gone and my house smelled like a citrus candle and something expensive that I later learned was hairspray labeled Runaway Hold. Leon was asleep on the couch, one arm flung over his eyes. His phone blinked with missed calls. A notice peeped out from under a stack of glossy mailers on the entry table. Property tax delinquency, final warning. I held it to the kitchen light and felt my throat go tight. Final is a word that pushes you toward a door. I let Leon sleep. I made coffee. I took a shower and cried into the hot water like it would keep my tears from counting. Then I set a towel around my shoulders and went to the hall closet, pulled down the fireproof box, and found a folder I hadn't opened in years. Deed. Will. One letter from my husband in his impossible slanted handwriting. If I go first, don't let anyone take from you what you paid for with your hands. I touched the paper. I touched the ring on its chain around my neck. I inhaled. Around 9, I knocked on the couch with the back of my knuckles. Leon blinked. Mom? You look like you're going to a job interview. I am, I said. With myself. He smiled and tried to stretch the charm over the morning. We can talk after I shower. We'll talk now, I answered. I put the tax notice in his hand. He winced. I'll fix it, he said. With what money? He didn't answer. The silence had weight. Leon, I said, keeping my voice in the lane of calm because I've learned that shouting just scatters the pieces you need to put back together. You and Bryn have 30 days. This house is legally mine. There's no lease. You'll get a formal notice today. I'll help you with a deposit on a studio if you want to start clean. I will also hire a locksmith and, if necessary, ask the sheriff to enforce the notice. His mouth opened. Closed. You'd kick me out? I'd keep myself from dying for boys who won't become men, I said. It came out harder than I meant, but not untrue. He flushed. We're building something, Mom. Castles out of measuring cups, I said gently. I remember. But you can't build in another person's house and call it your land. He texted Bryn. She blew in an hour later wearing sunglasses in the kitchen like the sun lived by the spice rack. This is dramatic, she said. We can talk budgets after brunch. Talk is not a budget, I said. Then I set the envelope on the table. Notice Tio quit, 30 days. I hadn't built it alone. I'd called legal aid at 7, explained everything, and cried only once. A woman named Danielle spoke to me like she was passing a hot mug into cold hands. You're doing something brave and ordinary, she said. That's what we call responsible. Bryn laughed when she read the letter. We'll just fight it, she said. Squatters' rights, or whatever. I shook my head. It doesn't work like that. She turned to Leon. You're really going to let her kick the two of us out because she's bored? Leon's eyes flicked to mine. They were the same blue as when he was 3 and tried to hide behind the curtain during hide-and-seek and giggled so loudly he gave himself away. It's her house, he said. He said it like I'd taught him to tell the truth even when it wasn't convenient. He said it, and I saw a line in the sand he didn't cross. Not that day. They lasted 10 days without a storm. On the 11th, an envelope arrived addressed to me from a dealership, past due, lease number 2. Bryn breezed into the kitchen and plucked the letter out of my hand. Oh, that's for the second car, she said. Relax, we only missed once because the event in Palm Springs ran long. She kissed the air. We're manifesting sponsorships. Big ones. Once they land, it's all back on track. You'll be so proud. She smiled like pride is something you can force someone to feel with the right lighting. That night, the store was sure to closer, and I stayed an extra hour wiping shelves until my back felt like a row of mismatched books. When I finally sat in my car, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I clenched the steering wheel and watched my breath make ghosts on the glass. In the rearview mirror, the woman looking back at me had oil in her hair and salt on her cheeks. She also had eyes I recognized, steady, not mean, and tired in a way that meant done. I went home and wrote 2 letters. The first was typed on cheap printer paper, a formal resignation effective in 2 weeks to my manager, with a handwritten thank you that said, "You took a chance on me when most people didn't." The second letter I wrote with a pen that glides. It was to my heart. "You can have me back now," I wrote. "I'm sorry I kept giving you to people who didn't know what you cost. If you think that poetic nonsense doesn't matter, you're right until it does." The act of saying it out loud to a piece of paper made me feel like I'd swept a corner of my own head for the first time in months. The morning of day 14, I was frying chicken when my manager hissed, "I think you have a visitor," and tipped his chin toward the glass. Bryn stood outside in sunglasses and a blazer over a tiny dress, holding up her phone so the camera caught me in my headset. She was live. Her caption scrolled too fast for me to read. I could guess. Something about a toxic parent and boundaries. If you'd told me that scene would have made me want to laugh a year ago, I'd have called you cruel. Instead, I felt a click inside. Like a gear finding its tooth. There's a kind of quiet that only comes when you stop trying to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. I pointed toward the no recording sign on the window and then pointed toward the exit. She filmed my hand. She filmed my face. She filmed the no like it was the funniest word she'd ever heard. When she left, she posted a story of the red convertible with the caption, "Haters don't pay for gas." They were gone 3 days after that. Not because they'd packed. Because the convertible got towed from a no parking zone downtown and Leon called me from a borrowed phone because his was dead and the other car had a boot on it and, "Mom, please." The boot made a sound in my ear I didn't like. So I did something I'm still proud of. I picked up. I listened. And then I said, "I'm not paying for your consequences. You have 18 days left on your notice. Come collect your things. I will help you find a shelter or a roommate situation. I will not pay for a tow truck or a boot fee." He was quiet. When he finally spoke, he sounded small. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry." If he'd asked for a ride, I would have given him one. He didn't. He found a friend. Day 27 was a Wednesday. I spent the afternoon packing their things into clear bins so they could see what they owned before they sold the story of it. I labeled everything. I found the measuring cups he used to make castles and put them on top of his clothes. A small mercy. A private joke only I would ever understand. That night, the manager asked if I could take the drive-thru because the new kid got nervous when the line wrapped around the building. I said yes. People shouted their orders into the speaker like they were throwing rocks at a well. People always think they are the only ones awake. The headset crackled in my ear until I took it off. I set it on the counter. "Mara?" the manager asked. "I'm not feeling well," I said. It wasn't a lie. My heart had moved into my throat and was knocking like a late guest. I went to the back, sat on an upturned crate, and counted my breaths in the way the nurse had taught me. The numbers marched. I made it to 10. I made it to 20. I made it to the sentence, "I can't do this anymore." I gave my notice 3 days early. The manager tried to talk me out of it. I held his hands like we were praying and said, "I want you to hire 2 teenagers and give them both the hours you would give me." He laughed because he thought I was making a joke. I wasn't. I wanted my leaving to make more room. Day 30 fell on a Sunday. Leon and Bryn spent Saturday night posting from a rooftop with a pool. I don't know how. People always have a friend with a key. I served them breakfast on the driveway, a plastic container of leftover chicken, a carton of coleslaw biscuits. I know how that sounds. Cruel. But the kitchen was packed, the house was clean, and my body had learned to serve food when there was trouble. We are all trained by something. You don't unlearn it in a week. Bryn looked at the food like it was a test and she was too good to take it. Leon ate like he hadn't in days. "Thanks, Mom," he said. "Please sign this receipt for your bins," I said. The sheriff would have come if I'd asked, but I wanted to try courtesy first. I wanted to try everything first. They signed. They loaded. They stalled. People always do when they can smell the end of a story they thought they were writing. Bryn put her hands on her hips and told me I was going to be very lonely. I nodded. "Probably for a while," I said. "That's what healing sounds like at first." She climbed into the back seat of a friend's car, rolled down the window, and muttered, "We'll be back." I smiled because threats made by people who never set alarms can't wake you. "Only if you bring a lease and a check," I said. "Otherwise, no." When the last bin left my driveway, the house exhaled. I don't mean that like a metaphor. The air actually changed. It smelled like pine sol and rain. I closed the door behind the quiet, leaned my forehead against the wood, and didn't cry. There weren't tears left for this part. There was a list on the table I'd written in clean block letters. Cardiologist, Monday 9 a.m. Water aerobics, Tuesday/Thursday 10 a.m. Senior discount. Dietitian, Wednesday 2 p.m. Bring food diary. Walk at the lake, every day after breakfast. Friends, call Ruth, call Etta, call Pastor Tom. Sleep, dark room by 10 p.m. Breathe, on purpose. I posted the list on my refrigerator like a child's painting. I told my heart we were going to live like we were worth our own oxygen. Then I took a nap with the kind of silence that doesn't ask for anything. You'd like, I think, a dramatic scene where Bryn returns with a camera and a speech, and I eviscerate her with a legal term so sharp it bleeds her followers. But the truth is smaller and more satisfying. She sent me a text 2 weeks later. "We're struggling. The car situation is complicated. Can we come back for just a month until brand deals hit?" "No," I wrote. "Then, I will pay for a week at the women's shelter and an appointment at the workforce center. I'll also pay the fee for a budgeting class. You are welcome to accept the help. You are not welcome to move back in." She wrote a paragraph the length of a scarf about loyalty and family. She wrote a sentence about how I owe them because youth is expensive. I put the phone on the counter and sipped my tea. Then I wrote, "I love my son. I love myself. I love my house. I will not pay rent for your parties. Here is the number of a counselor who helped me after my husband died. He charges on a sliding scale." Leon called that night. He didn't sound like a boy. He didn't sound like a man. He sounded like a person who had walked a long way in thin shoes. "Mom," he said, "I got a job at the warehouse. It's nights." We both laughed quietly at that. "I'm taking an online course too. Not for a degree. For certification. IT support. It's cheaper. Brins, we're figuring things out. I'm proud of you," I said. And I meant it in the small present tense, not the future perfect they'd been chasing. Proud of a shift. Proud of a set of keys on a new ring that didn't belong to me. He cleared his throat. "I know you were worried about your heart. How are you?" I told him about the water aerobics and how the pool felt like forgiveness. I told him about how the dietitian said I didn't need to be perfect, just consistent, and how that sentence had healed a part of me I didn't know was sore. I told him about sleep and how it tastes when you've been starving for it quietly for years. He listened like a son, not like a customer waiting to talk. The first time I went to water aerobics, I picked the spot near the ladder in case I needed to climb out quickly and make it look like I meant to. A woman with hair the color of a sweet potato casserole smiled at me and said, "First time," in a way that made it sound like the beginning of a holiday. "It is," I said. She did not ask me why I was there. She did not ask me what I'd lost. Sometimes women our age are kind like that. They let you keep your dignity folded around you while you climb into the water. After class, I sat in my car and wrote 4 words on a post-it: "I'm not a refrigerator." Then I laughed out loud, alone in the parking lot, because sometimes the silliest metaphor is the one that keeps you pulling over to write down your own rescue. The town changed me into a schedule. Monday was doctor, Tuesday was pool, Wednesday was appointments, Thursday was a long call with my friend Ruth about her cats and her basil. Friday I baked again, not for a fundraiser, but because lemon bars taste like light and I had been eating dim for too long. Leon's warehouse job turned into a supervisor position in 6 months. He said nights felt easier when he knew what they were for. He posted fewer photos. When he did, they were of a free sunset at the end of a shift or a plant he was keeping alive on a windowsill I didn't pay for. Bryn tried 3 more times to move back in. Each message came dressed in a different season: apology, anger, strategy. Each time, I said no and offered something else: shelter lists, a bus pass, the number of a recruiter who helps people find jobs you can do in shoes you already own. She never took the help. But the offers weren't for her, if I'm honest. They were for Leon to hear, to know that love isn't a door propped open with your back until your spine is glass. Love is a house with windows. You can see in. You can see out. You can knock. I saw Bryn once, months later, under the fluorescent lights of a discount store, fingering a set of curtains like it might change her life. She was alone. She saw me and stiffened like the fabric in her hand was suddenly evidence. I smiled. She didn't. She said, "You think you won, don't you?" "I think I stopped losing," I said. "There's plenty left in the world for you to win that isn't mine." She opened her mouth and then closed it. She put the curtains back. She left the aisle like the floor was too honest. When tax season came, I sat across from a man who looked like a friendly calculator and told him I'd quit my job and withdrawn part of my tiny savings to fix the soft spots in my kitchen floor. He clicked his keyboard. "It's not a crime to care for your house," he said. "It's not a crime to rest." The house gleamed. Not showroom clean. Lived in clean. The kind of clean where you can put your face on the counter and not taste salt. The kind of clean where you can invite someone in and not apologize for the first 3 things they see. On the anniversary of the day I served the notice, I woke up before my alarm out of habit and lay in bed and listened to silence like it was an orchestra finally tuning to the same note. I brewed coffee. I stood at the window. The maple had leafed out in a shade of green that looks like the word beginning. I put on my shoes. I walked to the lake. My heart beat like the good kind of drum. I thought of all the nights I stood over a fryer and counted orders to keep myself from counting years. I thought of my hands now softer, still mine. I thought of Leon and whispered his name into the morning like a prayer that isn't asking for anything, just saying thank you to the distance between 2 points. Back home, my phone buzzed. A message from my old manager: "We hired 2 kids after you left, just like you said. One's saving for nursing school. The other's helping his mom with bills. They ask about you. We miss you." I typed back, "Tell them they made room for themselves. Tell them to drink water. Tell them to go home when their bodies say go." Another message arrived an hour later. Leon. A photo of a small classroom with mismatched chairs and a whiteboard. "Passed my cert," he wrote. "Start at the help desk on Monday. Day shift. I'm making a spreadsheet. Don't laugh." There was a second photo, him holding the certificate, his smile cautious, like it wasn't sure it deserved to be that wide. My boy. Not a boy. Not a brand. A person with a shift that ends before the sky goes black. "I'm not laughing," I wrote. "I'm clapping." That afternoon, I went to the pool. The water held me up like it always does. The woman with sweet potato hair waved. "Look at you," she said. "You move easier now." "I sleep," I said. "The world is kinder when you sleep." "Now you sound like a person with boundaries," she said, grinning. "Isn't that the wildest luxury?" On the way home, I drove past the fast food place. The lights were on. The line was long. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel superior. I felt like a woman who had stood there when she had to and then walked away when she could. I whispered to the building, "Hire kind. Praise often. Give breaks," and the wind took my advice like it takes everything, scattering it where it might land. You want to know the twist? It isn't that I was secretly rich. It isn't that a lawyer found a missing fortune or a long-lost inheritance. The twist is smaller and nastier and more useful. I stopped believing that love meant breaking myself into smaller and smaller pieces so people could swallow me without chewing. I started believing that love could mean serving someone a plate and saying, "Here is what I can offer. Here is what I can't. If you need more, you will have to make it." In the end, the sheriff never had to stand on my porch. He stood in my driveway on the morning I told him about the notice, nodded like a man who has watched 1,000 families learn the hard way, and said, "Call if it turns ugly." It didn't. It turned plain. They left in a friend's car full of bins. I wiped the counters. I changed the sheets. I slept. I woke. I went to the doctor and the pool. I bought vegetables that looked like jewels. I laughed at a joke Ruth told me about her cats misreading the weather. Every now and then, when I am very gentle with myself, I take down the old letter from my husband and read the part that says, "Don't let anyone take from you what you paid for with your hands." Then I fold it back into the hard folder and put it in the box and close the lid like a promise. Then I take my own letter, the one to my heart, and add a postscript. Today we walked 2 miles. Today we said no. Today we said yes to water and a nap and a call from our son where he told us about a driver he helped over the phone who cried when her computer finally sprang back to life. The clickbait version of this story is simple. Poor grandma slaves at KFC while son parties in a red car. She kicks him out and quits. It's true enough. But if you've stayed this long, you know the Sutler headline I would write if I could hang it over my front door. Woman stops asking darkness to explain itself and opens the blinds. If you're waiting for a final confrontation with Bryn where she admits everything and we hug in a parking lot as the rain cleans the concrete, I can't give that to you. She sent a postcard from a beach with no return address. It said, "Hope you're well." I hope she is, genuinely. The world is kinder when I hope that. If she ever knocks on my door, I will offer a chair and a glass of water and a printed list of apartments with small kitchens and quiet floors. I will not offer my bedroom. I will not offer my keys. When neighbors ask how I am, I tell them the truth. I'm wasting time on my health like it's my new part-time job. They laugh. I let them. It's not a joke. Not really. I clock in every morning when I lace my shoes. I clock out when I turn the kettle off at 9 and lay down where clean sheets live. The benefits are better than any job I ever had. Paid in breath. Paid in sleep. Paid in the sound of my son saying, "Good night, Mom," from his own place, with his own bills, and a schedule that doesn't require me to keep grease on my skin. At 4:52 a.m., not long ago, I woke out of habit and didn't know what to do with the leftover piece of night. I made toast. I leaned on the counter and looked at the quiet house. Once upon a time, that hour was when I was strongest, because I had to be. Now, it is just a tender place I visit sometimes to say to the woman I used to be, "You did it. You made daylight." And in the very middle of the story, on a day when the air smelled like cut grass and summer thunder, I saw a red convertible in my rearview, a different one, older, someone else's dream. It passed me with the windows down and music loud. I smiled at its speed and then turned into the parking lot of the community center, hoisted my bag onto my shoulder, and walked inside to the pool where the light moves in squares across the water like slices of mercy. I climbed down the ladder and let the water hold the parts of me I used to hold alone. If you've got someone living in your house who mistakes your love for a rental agreement with no payments due, print a notice. Print a schedule. Print a recipe for lemon bars. Bake them for yourself. Serve them on your own clean plate. Sit at your table and eat one while it's still warm. Call the sheriff if you have to. Call your heart either way. Tell it, "You can have me back now." Then keep your promise. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've got a pool or a lake. Tell me if your house needs a new floor. I'll tell you how to find a discount. I'll tell you to drink water. I'll tell you that sometimes the best revenge is 8 hours of sleep and a refusal to finance someone else's nightlife. I'll tell you that if you listen, you can hear your own life knocking politely at your door, asking to be let in. Open it. Let it sit. Feed it something warm. Then show it the list on your refrigerator and say, "I'm on my way."
So, another story of my grandmother has end. And be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.